This video, amusingly enough, was brought to you by Surfshark. Hello friends, so as you have probably heard, the infamous Bill C-11, Prime Minister Trudeau's highly contentious legislation to give the Canadian government new powers to control what Canadians see and watch and listen to online, officially became law the other day. Immediately after clearing one last procedural vote in the Canadian Senate, C-11 was formally signed into law on the evening of April 27th by the Chief Justice of the Supreme Court, Richard Wagner. This final step is known as the granting of royal assent, and ordinarily the Governor General does it in a big fancy ceremony, while Supreme Court judges only do it when there's some sort of rush and the Governor General is unavailable. So the fact that the government was willing to ditch with ritual in favor of getting the Chief Justice to just crank out a quick signature that same night does reflect just how eager the Trudeau administration is to get this law up and operational. Trudeau's Liberal Party is clearly exhausted with what a painful, drawn-out ordeal passing this law has become. They clearly underestimated just how controversial this bill was going to be, and the amount of time that they have been forced to spend defending it at every step of the legislative process, as well as in the media, has clearly come at the expense of many other things they would rather be doing. But now, at long last, they have finally pushed it over the finish line, and in one important way, this story is now over. There is no more Bill C-11, there is only the Online Streaming Act of 2023. As someone who has been doing my best to fight this legislation for the better part of 2 years, I have to say that I have found this very long debate to be incredibly encouraging. Canadians have proven themselves a people that remain very protective of their right to free speech and a free press, and very hostile to the idea of government infringing on either. The idea of the federal government granting itself new powers in an attempt to control something as personal and intimate as what kind of videos we watch on our computers on our free time, or what kind of music we listen to, or what type of content creators should be expected to make, clearly struck many Canadians as deeply disturbing, if not outright frightening. Over the last 2 years, it has been really heartening to see how many Canadian content creators of all ideological persuasions have made YouTube videos or TikToks or social media posts speaking out against this legislation, as well as the vast number of ordinary Canadians who have spoken out against this bill in various ways as well, raising concerns about it with politicians or the press or just friends and family. It is important to remember that things do not usually become controversial for no reason. Controversy is a reaction, and I think the controversy that this legislation has faced has been an appropriate consequence to both the legislation itself and the way that the Trudeau administration has attempted to sell and defend it. From the very beginning, the Trudeau government has said very loudly and often that they consider an unregulated internet, something that had previously been a bipartisan consensus policy in Canada for over 2 decades, to be a threat to Canada's cultural sovereignty. They have said, again very explicitly, that they view Canadians' tendency to freely consume media produced in other countries as a threat to Canadian culture, patriotism, and nationalism. They say that even though Canadian content creators have been extraordinarily successful on an unregulated internet, they do not think that the right kind of Canadian content is being consumed in the right amounts. They have refused to explain or define what their definition of good Canadian content is, and have instead only made vague gestures at ideological buzzwords. But worse than that, they have resisted every opportunity to clarify how they intend to use these new powers that this legislation has given the federal government. The Trudeau administration has in fact been head-spinningly obtuse on this front. On the one hand, they have said that this legislation will herald the beginning of a dramatic new era in Canadian culture, engorge the nation with a renewed sense of identity and purpose. But then, on the other hand, they say that content creators have absolutely nothing to worry about, and that somehow the government's explicitly stated desire to make Canadians watch more good, patriotic Canadian videos and listen to more good, patriotic Canadian music will somehow not affect Canadian content creators in any way, and no one is losing any freedom, and anyone who complains about anything is just a paranoid lunatic. Let me just read you a quote from City News, because I think they sum up the situation very well. The passing of Bill C-11 is the biggest piece of broadcast or media legislation this country has seen in decades. You would think we'd have a clear picture of its implications. But despite receiving royal assent and becoming law, not even leading experts in the field can say what this bill's many changes will look like in practice. And now I want to show you a clip of the Minister of Canadian Heritage, Pablo Rodriguez, attempting to explain what the law will do when asked by a journalist. Now, for political reasons, the job of Heritage Minister is often held by a Quebecer, and Minister Rodriguez does not speak English very well. But even then, it is still striking to notice just how amazingly terrible he is at playing defense for this legislation. In the following clip, the minister is being asked to explain why he rejected an amendment proposed by the Canadian Senate, an amendment that basically sought to call his bluff. The government had repeatedly said that they had no intention of regulating creator content and only wanted to regulate the platforms. So like regulate YouTube and Spotify, but not regulate the individual videos or songs. This is obviously impossible, as I have said many times before. It's like saying you want to regulate bookstores and control which books become bestsellers without regulating books themselves. The new law seeks to regulate how the online platforms distribute and promote content in order to steer users towards the right sort of content, which means that content will be affected. But the government insisted that wouldn't be the case, so the Senate passed an amendment explicitly saying content would not be affected by the bill. And the Trudeau administration rejected that amendment, and the minister was asked why.
You had the chance to be more explicit, to ascribe in the intent of the writing of the bill a very clear intent not to tackle content creation, and you didn't take it.
Well, no, that amendment from the senators wasn't doing that. It was creating a loophole. For example, it would say that if you take a song, a commercial song, that would be captured on Spotify, and you put a background, then that song is not captured on YouTube. At the end of the day, it's the same song that you're listening to. So you have to be fair. If something is commercial and it's in social media and it's exactly the same thing that is on, for example, Spotify, then it has to be captured in the same way, but not the content. I'm not interested in the content. We're only interested in knowing how much of that commercial is there, so you can then base what the platform will pay in terms of revenues based on that. That's it.
Okay, so A, that was basically incoherent, and B, from what I could tell, the minister was actually reinforcing something that critics like me have always alleged, which is that the government seems to regard online videos and music that make money for the creator, such as this video that you're watching right now, to basically be commercial content of a sort that the government has an inherent right to regulate. When he talks about content the government has no interest in regulating, he is clearly imagining some sort of frivolous content that makes no money for the creator. Cat videos has been the condescending line that the government has often used, even though there are of course many creators who make money from cat videos. Anyway, the state of uncertainty and anxiety that hangs over Canada's large and important creator economy is going to continue, and very much should continue. For better or for worse, we will not even have full closure on just how much this new law will change our jobs and livelihoods until the federal regulatory body, known as the Canadian Radio, Television and Telecommunications Commission, or CRTC, actually uses the new powers given to them by the Online Streaming Act to formulate actionable policies that can be then imposed on Netflix and YouTube and Spotify and Pornhub and everything else. Just as an aside, this is actually a larger pet peeve I have about the way that our government works these days. We task our elected politicians with making laws and expect them to be accountable to the public, but instead our elected politicians increasingly just give their powers to these unelected bureaucratic agencies and say, hey, you guys figure it out. So the CRTC, the true parliament in this case, will do its hearings and pass some policies which the Trudeau administration will seek to puppeteer to some degree. And then at some point in time, I don't know whether it is going to be a few months or a year or what, Canada's new rules governing online content creation and distribution will actually be in place, and Canada will have entered a distressing new era in which the internet is more regulated than ever before, and certainly more regulated than in any other free country. I now want to do a sponsored segment on behalf of Surfshark. I did not originally intend to do a sponsored segment in this video, but I think it is actually extremely appropriate given what we are talking about today and the nature of the sponsor. Surfshark makes a VPN app. A VPN is a virtual private network, and when you use a VPN, it masks a lot of the personal data that might otherwise be broadcast when you use the internet, including, most prominently, your geographic location. Various websites use this geographic data to give you a different user experience based on which country they can tell you're in. This is why Netflix shows shows you different shows in Australia than in America, or why you get different Google results in Pakistan than in Holland, or why I cannot stream British TV shows from the BBC website. But when you use a VPN, you can fool these sites into thinking you come from whatever country you choose, and thus get access to types of content that might ordinarily be region locked. Once the Canadian Online Streaming Act takes full effect, it is going to be absolutely vital, in my opinion, for all Canadians to possess a VPN in order to dodge whatever crazy patriotism requirements the government demands all of your favorite streaming sites obey. Surfshark has the cheapest monthly rate of the 3 big VPN providers and is the only one that can be used on an unlimited number of personal devices. Fans of this channel will get a particularly good deal if you sign up using the link in the thing below with the promo code JJMCC. You'll get 83% off a 24-month contract plus a bonus 3 months absolutely free. And if you're not completely satisfied, they also have a 30-day money-back guarantee. Even if you're not Canadian, it is still probably worth getting, just because God only knows how much longer it will be before other countries are inspired to follow Canada's lead. And that is the other thing. Okay, the sponsored bit is over now. This is really a terrible example that Canada is setting for the rest of the world. Canada is supposed to be one of the freest countries on the planet, and for all of the problems that we have, I do believe that that is mostly true. But now our government has said that doing something as illiberal as seeking to control what people post or watch online is justifiable, so long as it is being done in the name of patriotism. And yeah, that is certainly a line of reasoning that's never been abused by government. As far as I'm concerned, in passing this new law, Canada has really lost a lot of its moral high ground when it comes to speaking out against the media censorship regimes of other countries. But you know, all of that said, the battle is not fully over. I personally hope that I will get a chance to testify at the CRTC hearings, just as I testified twice at the Parliament, and I encourage all Canadians who opposed Bill C-11 to continue to speak out against the Online Streaming Act. As long as this terrible law remains on the books, it should continue to be a headache for this government. After all, they brought it on themselves. As long as this terrible law remains on the books, it should continue to be a headache for this government. After all, they brought it on themselves. What up, dog? What up, dog?
Actually, Bill C-11 is good.
No.
Actually, Bill C-11 is good, actually.
No.
My favorite part about Bill C-11 is that it's based, and the kids should love it.
This video is over.